Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Today I want to talk about human nature and how we can overcome what is wrong with us. We inherit a nature that is restless and acquisitive, and without proper guidance, it tends to be... Have you ever watched animals? Let's say a bird, for example. Maybe you've been at a parking lot somewhere, at a Walmart or a grocery store, and you're sitting in your car and you see the pigeons come around. You see them endlessly looking for food, endlessly hunting and pecking and grabbing things that litter that people threw down and pecking at it and turning it upside down. And they spend their whole life looking for something, don't they? Well, what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for food. Now, what is the human nature, the unredeemed human nature? We're endlessly looking for what? Some kind of ego food. We're looking for worship. We're looking for approval. We're looking for something to make us feel good, like God. Something to make us feel right. Something to take away any feelings of not being right so that we can bathe ourselves in pleasure and in things, you see? So we're always looking for something. Something to adorn ourselves, something to take around and show other people, something to impress others with. And from them we get worship, and of course, when we don't get worship from them, then we resent them, and we try to prove ourselves good so that they'll be wrong and we'll be right. You see what I mean? So this life of endlessly seeking, self-seeking in a wrong way, self-seeking to build up this something that is apart from God. See, you can build, something can be built within you that is of God, or something can be built in you that's not of God and that opposes God. And the result of being separated from God, which you were born in that state. You're born separated from God, except you have a link. You have your intuition, you have your conscience. But by and large, you're born subject to the world and to authorities around you, and you develop as a creature of that environment. And so your little ego hunts and pecks for little bits of ego food to build itself. You want to be a king or a queen or a great boxer or an adventurer or a scientist, or you want to be beautiful and wonderful, a princess. You want to be something. So that's okay. That's the way kids are. And so we dream of this and that, and we model ourselves after people that we see. And that's all perfectly natural. And we're subject to tease, and a little bit of tease from the outside. We almost need it in order to grow, because without it, we wouldn't even grow. Because that's our nature, to grow by way of tease. Do you understand that? That's how Adam fell from God and then began to grow as an ego separate from God. So since that's what we inherit, that's what we need in order to sustain ourselves. So little intrigues and gossip and tease and little challenges and all of these things, yes, they do help us to grow. But what we grow into is a big ego. Now, once again, that's just perfectly natural. That's what we inherit. But the problem with that is that we could be much more. And if you don't begin to find that much more, in other words, if you're not able to make a transition toward trying to find another kind of life, then all you can do is keep growing your ego. Now, when you were a little child, the little intrigues and challenges and teases and all of these things, well, they helped you to grow. But when you get older, when you become an adult, then a continuation of the same thing then becomes, you become lopsided. It becomes unnatural. It even becomes painful. And sense something wrong because you become wronger and wronger. More and more of an ego built apart from God. See what I mean? Built upon the shifting sands of people's approval and tease and so on. You see what I mean? So the more you build that ego, the more conflict you acquire with God. Because we're supposed to leave behind that ego life and take up another life, a life from God. And the way you find that life from God is by yearning for it. And yearning and wanting to know the truth and being willing to know the truth. And then God begins to give you more light, and you begin to see your own wrong. If you can see your own wrong without resenting seeing it, in other words, if you willingly submit to the truth, in other words, God's light, that shows you you're wrong, and you regret what you see about yourself and also realize that you can't change yourself. So seeing your own wrong in God's light, realizing in God's light that you can't change yourself, and yet yearning to be better, even though you don't know what better is, well, that's the kind of an attitude that God will begin to work in your life. And he does it in the most marvelous way. He gives you light. He shows you a little bit of your wrongs where you can be sorry for them. He ever so gently gives you things to do and to be interested in that are proper things. And he begins to put order into your life, into your finances, into your relationship, into your health, into everything. He begins to restore you, and he gives you time. He gives you time to ponder, to discover, to realize. And all the while, within you now is something growing of God, a character of God, a character that responds to God. Can you see that just as those birds can only do one thing, and that's peck, 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 hunt, hunt, hunt for food? Can you see that the only thing the fallen human being can do is peck, 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 and hunt, hunt, hunt for approval, for worship, for honor, for praise, for glory? And when you don't get it, resentment, and then compensation to try to prove something, and denying the truth about your own wrong. Can you see that? So now there's another way. See, there's another way. And the other way is a nature that instead of hunting and pecking for approval and worship and trying to be God, see, that's the problem. That's you could call it the dirty little secret about the ego. It wants to be God. It wants to play God. Do you understand? Wants to be right and never wrong. So that nature that wants to be right and never wrong, why, it's constantly craving worship and admiration and all that kind of stuff. And then not only that, but then it craves approval, and it craves reassurance. And if it's denied any kind of reassurance, and it looks for reassurance in food, in clothes, in things, in alcohol, in people's words, in feelings, it looks for reassurance. And when it doesn't get it, it feels what? Anxiety. Because without the reassurance and the constant reinforcement of reassurance, then it has to face what it is. See what I mean? Now, you can probably remember times, especially when you were younger, where, maybe when you were a young person, you liked to go out and do a lot of things. And then maybe it was a Sunday afternoon and there was nothing happening and it was raining and you didn't have anything to do and no one to call, and you sat there and you became bored and you became very, very antsy. You remember that kind of an experience? Well, that's something like what the ego feels when everything is withdrawn from it and it's forced to see its own wrong. It's like when someone pulls the rug out from under you. You always are catering to them so they'll cater to you, or pretending to see them in a good light so they'll see you in a good light. And then all of a sudden one day they pull the rug out from under you and you're exposed. You see your own weakness. You see your own clinginess and craving for love and craving for approval and craving for reassurance. And it's embarrassing. Well, now you must just see that that's the way the fallen human being is. Don't resent yourself. See, that's another way of playing God, to try to rise above your own wrongs by resenting yourself, puffing up in judgment on yourself, as if you were God judging your own wrongs. You see what I mean? So now the answer is learn to be still. Learn to meditate properly. Get the little 8-minute free meditation that I made. It's very nice. Or get the 4-part meditation, the beautiful 4-part meditation, which I have made free. I've made it free. And I also have some reading material. A couple of books I wrote. You can get them in ebook form, free, when you get that 4-part meditation. And start to meditate. And yearn for what's true. Yearn for what is good. Yearn for what is innocent. Yearn for that. Realize that you can't give it to yourself. Simply yearn for it. And practice the little meditation. You have to be able to stand back from sinking in the swamp of your own sensuality, your own emotions, your own thoughts and imagination that rise up to pull you into them. See, that fallen nature is very strong in that it wants to pull you into it. And if you don't know how not to get pulled into it, then that's where you live. You live pulled totally into it, and that's the way 99.9% of the people in the world live. Christ said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." They're totally lost in their fallen nature and in their body sensations and then their thoughts that come from outside, and lost in the challenges and the teases and the cruelties and the confusion that emanate from all around them. They're totally lost in it. It's like sinking into a swamp, and they don't know how to pull themselves out. And so you have the benefit of having heard about the little meditation and having heard some of the things that I say. And so the choice is there. You can begin to incline toward your Creator and yearn for His help, because He's the one that can rescue you from the abyss of your dark thoughts and from the swamp of your sensuality. He can do it. You can't pull yourself out. You can't pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. He must do it, and He will do it. But you must yearn for Him, yearn to know the truth. And when the truth begins to dawn, just see it, whatever it is, and don't resent it. Because the first truths you'll see will often be truths about yourself. You'll see your own wrong, your own sneakiness, your own evasiveness, your own selfishness, and so on. Careful. Don't resent seeing it on the one hand. Don't resent yourself on the other. And watch out for emotions. They're always rising because they lie to you. The emotions rise and give you a feeling of another kind of a life apart from God. I could make another little audio all about that, but it's the emotional life, the life of reacting and responding to things on the outside. Now you must learn to calm down and respond to what comes from within, wordlessly, in God's light. Find that light and live in that light, and you will be rescued from all of your problems. And then, after you're rescued, whatever comes along will only be an opportunity to build more character. With each new challenge, faced properly, with patience, without resentment, watching, waiting, calling upon God. Each new challenge then helps to build this new nature that answers to God and is only subject to God, and which is moving toward God, and by which also your lower self is redeemed, saved, kosherized, made proper. And so your gross wants and needs, like drinking and smoking and gambling and all the things you may have done, unrestrained lust and so on, they'll begin to mitigate. You'll become more like you were when you were a little child. You'll still have that ego nature, but it will be restrained. And it will become an innocent ego nature. In other words, the same fallen nature will be there, but innocent. And then you watch it. You have to learn to watch when your body calls to you with animal cravings and hungers and thirsts and so forth. You have to learn to just watch your body as if it were a child. In some respects, a spoiled child who had learned to obey the call of the wild. There was a book written by Jack London called The Call of the Wild. That's what your body has learned to obey. And so now it needs to be, quieted. And it needs to have a good authority over it. And that's what you are when your soul loves God. When your soul loves God and turns to Him, then He becomes your authority. And then you have a proper authority, and representing the proper authority, then you become a proper authority for your body also. And the light, God's light, which comes into your soul and floods your being. It's good for your soul, and it's also good for your body, because we were made to live in God's light. That's right, we were made to live in God's light and to grow in his light like a plant. So therefore, I've given you some food for thought, and I hope you enjoyed this little audio, and please get the meditation if you haven't already and give it a try.